Welcome, my frightful friends, to the first night of our 31 Nights of Terror. I'm your host with the most unsettling tales, Professor Grimly Graves. I'm your humble guide through this unholy month, here to help you survive, barely. On tonight's episode, we'll be digging into a scarecrow story stitched together with duct tape, bad continuity, and just enough Jamie Alexander to keep you from turning it off. We're kicking off this series with Hallowed ground, and trust me, you'll be praying for deliverance before this movie's over. Warning. This review contains what some would call spoilers. Not that there's anything left to spoil about this movie. The filmmakers have already spoiled it for us. Tonight we wander into a cursed little town called Hope, where no one, I repeat, no one is getting out unscathed. Our heroine, Liz Chambers, is driving through the desert when, surprise, her dashboard lights up like a Christmas tree. She stops in at the local mechanics once she reaches town. Repairs, $300, which is horror movie code for you ain't leaving this town, baby. What begins as a simple road trip turns into a terrifying prophecy, as Liz finds herself stranded in a town where her arrival was foretold a century ago by none other than the founding preacher, Jonas Hathaway. And the good preacher is not quite finished with his work. Isn't that just how it always goes? You take a little vacation, it may be a romantic getaway, and bam, you find yourself dodging hillbilly cults. We've all been there, haven't we? Next stop, the diner, where Liz meets journalist Sarah Austin, a nosy journalist with a taste for danger. Sarah delivers 10 minutes of pure exposition about a crazy preacher named Jonas Hathaway, who crucified townsfolk. Wouldn't you know it, became the local cornfield boogeyman. She convinces Liz to join her on a field trip to check out Hathaway's corn farm, because we all know nothing bad ever happens in cornfields, right?
Outlander! We have your woman!
I just hope it's not the bird flu. I hear it's untweetable.
After checking out the place, they set up their own scarecrow for some photo fun. But the scarecrow doesn't take kindly to being posed for a picture. Liz wanders off to pee. And just like that, Sarah meets a most unpleasant end as the scarecrow comes alive and nails poor Sarah to a cross. The scarecrow stalks Liz through the maze of corn, and then, bam, it's suddenly nighttime. Continuity, never heard of it. A deputy arrives after being told that 2 women are missing. The scarecrow kills the cop. Liz drives off and stumbles into the sheriff's office, where things go from bad to worse. The sheriff is weirdly calm about a woman screaming that his deputy's been murdered. But he believes her and goes to check things out. Another deputy wanders off when he can't get anyone in the next town on the radio. Liz arms herself like Rambo, because isn't every random person comfortable and well-versed in firearms? The scarecrow attacks the station. Liz flees to a church. She finds what is made to appear like an old, handwritten book, but looks suspiciously as though it was just laser printed out of the production office. Liz has a tattoo exactly like one of the images in the book. Why'd she get it? When did she get it? What exactly is her connection? These are important questions the writer raises, but doesn't appear to feel the need to answer, and meets the priest. Finally, someone who might help her. Just kidding, he's the new cult leader who tells her she's destined to be the baby mama for Preacher Jonas's rebirth. Delightful. The sheriff shows up, rescues her. We find out she had a son, almost 2, who died a month before. Fell out a window. That's why she's uber depressed and took off on this road trip to hell. Just when we think they're safe, someone crashes into them. When the whole countryside is going batty and they're trying to escape, I don't know why they'd be driving anywhere near the Hathaway farm, but who am I to judge? Liz wakes up in bed wearing a white nightgown. Preacher comes in, starts taking his clothes off, tells her they only have until dawn to make a baby for Hathaway to inhabit. She dispatches him with a swift punch to the gut, escapes through a window, and meets Sabrina, a young girl hiding from the horror that's already claimed her parents. Together, they must survive the wrath of a town hell-bent on resurrecting its wicked founder. and they hide underground while the cult stomps around above them like blind elephants. Sheriff O'Connor shows up, gets possessed by Hathaway, and decides Liz isn't pure enough to carry Demon Daddy's spawn. So instead, she's going up on a cross. How considerate. Just when it looks like our heroine's about to become the next autumn decoration, Sabrina torches the farmhouse, distracting Hathaway and the cult members from their passion of the corn production. Liz impales Sheriff Hathaway with a pitchfork, and the townsfolk toss his body into the fire to free his spirit. Problem solved, right? Nope. Hathaway's spirit just body hops into Sabrina's scarecrow dad. With his newfound corn-bending superpowers, he traps Liz like some kind of discount poison ivy villain. The crows swoop in, and suddenly, surprise, the birds are the vengeful spirits of the dead. I didn't see that one coming. Neither did the screenwriter. The cult is shredded by feathers and talons. Liz and Sabrina survive, and Hathaway dies, until, of course, the final shot where his spirit stirs underground, setting up a sequel that never happened. Ah, yes. The script. Or should I say the dialogue to him, because, dear viewers, Hallowed Ground is full of lines that are awkward enough to make a scarecrow cringe. We get a one-line backstory dump, then we're off again. That's not intimacy. That's a post-it note. The script doesn't give the characters space to be. Instead, it shuttles them like cattle from scene to prophecy to horror beat. Exposition is slammed into your face like a shovel in the cornfield. In the diner scene, Sarah, the friendly neighborhood reporter, dumps an entire century's worth of history in one sitting. You can practically hear the writer thinking,
we'll just explain it all here and hope the audience doesn't realize how lazy this is.
Sympathy and any character building are unfairly put upon the actors. I care about the lead because it's Jamie Alexander, not because it's Liz Chambers. The whole thing is like a fortune cookie, but with less flavor. The film seems to constantly have to explain itself, as if it doesn't trust the viewer to follow along. Because its premise is so confusing, I'll admit I had to stop myself from drawing a family tree just to figure out who was being possessed by whom, and why the crows were suddenly unionized. Jamie Alexander spends the movie acting like she'd rather be anywhere other than the set of this film. Can't say I blame her. We get a performance so checked out I half expected her to clock out on screen and leave her time card at the sheriff's office. Meanwhile, Hudson Leak as Sarah Austin is over here like she's auditioning for a telenovela, but it feels less like a choice and more like she was desperately overcompensating for a complete lack of direction or characterization. But the funny part is, her energy actually wakes the movie up. In fact, every time she's on screen, you almost forget how lifeless the lead feels. Nick Chinland as Jonas Hathaway? Now that's how you choose scenery. This man shows up, looks like a fire and brimstone scarecrow preacher dipped in barbecue sauce, and proceeds to devour every frame he's in. Delicious. Absolutely delicious. Shame the film barely uses him, because I could have watched an entire hour of him ranting about cornfields and damnation. Brian McNamara, the sheriff, is the kind of solid, square-jawed hero type you could hang a movie on, except the movie forgets he exists for most of it. Every time he pops up, you suddenly think, oh, right, a competent actor. I forgot those were allowed. Walter Phelan as the possessed scarecrow? Criminally underrated. The man manages to be menacing and emotive while buried under burlap with no visible face. That's skill, and exactly how the scarecrow should have been handled. And then we get poor Chloe Grace Moretz in one of her earliest roles. She's given little more to do than spend what little screen time she has making weird faces. She's basically there to be kid in peril, take up time, and seems like a vain attempt to tie together some of the loose character threads the writer has been sewing. It's a shame, really, because the supporting cast are the ones injecting life into this cornfield catastrophe. Without them, you'd be left watching Jamie Alexander look like she's already planning her escape route from the sequel that mercifully never developed. Now, I will say, for a first stab at a feature film, it's not a total dumpster fire. The director, David Benullo, who also wrote the picture, had some decent ideas, but decent ideas aren't enough to carry a movie this ambitious. It's a bit like buying a fancy toolbox and only using the hammer, something I have to credit the director for, the scarecrow scenes. These are among the film's few genuinely creepy moments, and that's because Benullo mostly handles the scarecrow right. He doesn't overshow it. He films it mostly at night, frames it in shadows, lets you imagine more than you see. Those glimpses in the dark, the rustle of corn, the silhouette, when these are done, they work. They remind us that horror isn't always about gore or CGI. Often it's about what you don't see. Nothing really stands out stylistically. It wants to have a mood, lonely, ominous, cultish, but it rarely sustains it. The pacing is uneven. We bounce from exposition dumps to chase scenes to creepy stalker moments, and the transitions between these pieces are clunky. The audience has very little time to care about the characters before we're off running through a cornfield again. The narrative drags in parts, especially once the big reveal is out of the way. Thereafter, it's a lot of Liz running away, being captured, running again, chase, capture, rinse, repeat. Is hallowed ground actually scary? No. Unless, of course, you've got a pathological fear of cornstalks, in which case seek help immediately. What it does have, however, are a few moments of creepy atmosphere. A scarecrow that's used wisely, and a supporting cast engaging enough to keep you from nodding off completely. It's not the kind of film that'll send you running to lock the doors or sleep with the lights on. Instead, it's the cinematic equivalent of those fun-sized candy bars. Sure, it won't fill you up, but it'll do in a pinch. There's a reason this movie hasn't become a Halloween viewing staple or attained cult classic status. But make no mistakes, this one isn't a total dud. You could certainly do worse for a first night of Halloween viewing. Think of it as a way to stretch your screaming muscles before the heavy hitters arrive later in the month. Watch it once, enjoy the bits that work, and then tuck it away in the cornfield where it belongs. Well, my fiendish friends, that wraps up night one of our 31 nights of terror. If you survived hallowed ground without being sacrificed to the cornfield, then you're tougher than most. Be sure to claw that like button until it screams. Share this review with your fellow creatures of the night and subscribe so you don't miss what horrors we've dug up for night 2. Until then, keep your tombs tidy, your candles lit, and your scarecrows firmly nailed down. I'll be lurking for you tomorrow evening.